Hi, it's Katie from LearnKnowVote.org, and today I am going to translate the Declaration of Independence. When was the last time that you actually read through the Declaration of Independence? If you're like most normal Americans, probably not since high school, or maybe college if you went and you had to take a government course. But it is definitely not something that we read every day or remind ourselves of very often. But it is a very important document. Why does it need to be translated? It's already in English. The wording that Thomas Jefferson used all those years ago can seem like a different language to us nowadays, but it's still really important for us to know what it says. So that's why I'm here. I read it, I researched it, and now I'm gonna translate it. I have my handy little book here. It's the Constitution with the Declaration of Independence and the Articles of Confederation, but I'm just gonna use the Declaration part of it today. Here we go. The Declaration of Independence, action of Second Continental Congress, July 4th, 1776. The unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America, which in and of itself is a huge statement because the states had never referred to themselves as united before this document. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. My dog just sneezed. That whole mess of words means we no longer want to be a part of England, and here's why. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. There's two things in that sentence that I think need to be clarified. Thomas Jefferson's declaration that all men are created equal, a lot of people said that he was hypocritical for saying that because he did own slaves. He flip-flopped on that his whole life, but he did lay it down in the Declaration of Independence, and it's something that we have taken to be self-evident since. The second thing is pursuit of happiness. Now, some people might think, oh, just do whatever makes you feel happy. And in a way, it kind of means that, but it mostly means that you should have the freedom to determine your own path to fulfillment and prosperity and contentment, as long as it doesn't hurt other people. I researched it pretty well, and that's what people said. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles, and organizing its powers in such form, as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. That all means that the only legitimate government there is on earth is government that operates with the consent of the people that they are governing. And it's also saying that if their government isn't doing that, then they have the right and the obligation to fix it. Now, this next sentence is really important. It says, governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. They're saying that we know that this is a big deal. We don't think that we should just throw our government away just because we're mad at it. Revolution is heavy, we understand that. And it says, accordingly all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. So they're saying that the actions of the king are beyond what should be tolerated. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, invices a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Translated, that means when the government becomes tyrannical, we have to fix it. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. Thomas Jefferson was wordy, and he was very good at writing. But we don't talk like that anymore. What they're saying is, King George, you done effed up, and let me count the ways. Then follows a long list of complaints. There are actually 27 different charges that they bring against King George III. And I'm not gonna read them all because then this video is gonna be like 3 times longer than it needs to be. So I'm gonna give you the condensed version, and I took some notes here. So the 27 complaints that they made against King George III can be divided into 5 basic categories: legislative, judicial, military, making war, and domestic policy. At least that's what I came up with when I read it through. I don't know if that's like official or whatever, but that's how it makes sense to me. So their legislative complaints included denying representation to the colonies in Parliament, refusing to approve laws passed in America, even ones that were urgent and necessary and not really controversial. So in the federal government, when the legislative branch passes a law, the president still has to sign off on it. And that was like the equivalent back then. Individual colonies, they had their own legislatures, and so they were trying to pass laws, but he wouldn't sign off on them, so they couldn't go into effect. He made the legislative process unnecessarily difficult, approved of Parliament's laws that negatively affected the colonies. They opposed King George expanding Quebec's territory, changing their system of government from English laws to French laws because they thought that that was a little arbitrary. You can just abolish their entire system of laws. What's going to stop you from doing it here? Expanding Quebec and the Native Americans' territories inhibited westward expansion of the American colonies, so they were pretty pissed about that. He also suspended their colonial legislatures. Let me paint you a picture. The colonies had been self-governing for over 150 years. 150 years. That is a long-ass time to be governing yourself effectively. For that 150 years, things went pretty smoothly. The colonists considered themselves British subjects, because they were. But they had their own legislatures that they had set up under the auspices of the king's authority. But then came the French and Indian War, or what the Brits call the 7 Years' War. That war was hella expensive, and so the king couldn't afford to pay for it, and began to levy taxes and duties against the colonists, which on that scale had never been done before. The colonists were just absolutely livid because they're like, what right do you have to impose taxes and duties on us to pay for a war, because they weren't represented in Parliament? So they made redress. They wrote to the king and said, so can we join your Parliament? And the king said, no. So that made them even more angry, and so they went back and forth a lot and asking the king to reconsider all of these different things that they wanted to do to make it better, and he kept saying no because he thought that because they're British subjects that they should just do whatever he says no matter what. So this escalated and went back and forth and all that, to the point where the king actually suspended their legislatures. That would be like the president going into Texas and saying, Texas State Senate, you don't exist anymore and you're not allowed to make any laws. Deal with it. And Texas would be like, what the fuck? So needless to say, they were really, really mad. The second category is judicial, so things having to do with the court system. He refused to approve laws passed in America, oh wait, I just read that. He refused to approve laws that would allow the colonists to set up their own judicial system. He alone decided which judges were going to be approved and what their salary was going to be, which is what we refer to as a huge conflict of interest. He denied the right to a trial by jury in some cases. He required colonists to actually show up in England for their court appearances, which for a lot of them was practically impossible. The third category, how he handled the military. He had standing armies in the colonies in times of peace, which they were not happy about. There was the practice of quartering, which means that the colonists had to house, feed, and launder all the clothes of the soldiers that were in the colonies. They didn't want them there, but they still had to feed and take care of them. He declared martial law in, I know he declared martial law in Boston. I don't know if it was in the whole state of Massachusetts. If you know, let me know in the comments. They accused him of not trying soldiers fairly for murder. I don't particularly know which cases they were talking about, but that's what they accused him of. As far as domestic policy, they said that he discouraged migration to the colonies by executive action and inaction. They said that he approved policies that would make migration to America very difficult and refused to approve policies that would make migration to America easy. So they're like, you're cutting off our source of population growth. He cut off their trade to the rest of the world. He taxed them without consent, and he abolished their charters. And the last one was the way that he began to wage war with them. So the War for Independence actually started started in 1775 with Lexington and Concord, when the British Army went to go seize weaponry that the colonists had been stockpiling for some time because, you know, tensions were getting high for several years. So anyway, the war was already going on when they wrote the Declaration of Independence. They didn't declare their independence and then the war started. They had a problem with the way that he was waging war. Firstly, they were mad that he was hiring mercenaries. They described the way that he made war on the seas and on land, plundering and burning towns. They said he waged war on them and withdrew his protection. He enlisted Native Americans to fight against the colonists, and he incited insurrections and impressment. He forced colonists that were captured at sea, forced them to fight for him against America, which they felt was egregious. So those are all the complaints that they made against him. Like I said, it was a long, long list. So then there are 3 more paragraphs, and it says that in every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. You're doing a shitty job, and so we're just gonna do it ourselves. Nor have we been wanting in attentions to our British brethren. We have warned them from time to time of attempts by their legislature to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. We have reminded them of the circumstances of our emigration and settlement here, meaning we came here under the king's protection and authority. So we are British subjects, and so we're not being treated fairly as British subjects. We've appealed to their native justice and magnanimity. Magnanimity. I know what the word means, I just can't say it. Magnanimity. Basically, generosity. And we have conjured them by the ties of our common kindred to disavow these usurpations, which would inevitably interrupt our connections and correspondence. They too have been deaf to the voice of justice and consanguinity, meaning brotherhood. We must therefore acquiesce in the necessity which denounces our separation and hold them, as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war, in peace, friends. Now this paragraph, they accuse the British people of turning against them in spirit and action by not advocating for the colonists' rights. So then the last paragraph is just saying that, therefore, in conclusion, we are going to declare our independence from Great Britain. And then there is a long list of 56 people that signed the Declaration of Independence. That's it. It's the official document that marked the separation from England because of the abuses of power by King George III. We actually didn't become a country, although they did say the United States of America, but we didn't technically become a unified country until like 12 years later, when the Constitution that they later wrote had been ratified. So anyway, I hope you understand the Declaration of Independence and you feel more confident about your knowledge about American history, which is what I'm here for. That's what I love to do. I love to help people understand things that are kind of wonky in our day and age. So give this video a like if you enjoyed this. I upload new videos every week, so subscribe to make sure that you don't miss any. See you later.